Welcome back, everybody, for the last of our little mini series of podcasts on local elections, local matters. It's wonderful to have you here, Andrew Bydder and Logan and Tanya. We were, though, starting off on a fairly humorous note. Tanya, can you just tell me it's good for everybody to laugh at what the World Economic Forum wants to bring in. And I think it's sort of epitomized in the story you just let us know. So here we are in late December, just before Christmas, and I missed this story about John Key. What happened, Tanya?
Okay, so I'm pretty sure it was on our lovely Counterspin media. I could try and look for it. Mr. John Key's, and I think the guy from Flight of the Conchords was invited to a food tasting at some show in New Zealand recently, and was up on stage and was asked to enjoy crickets and, the protein, the bug protein. And they were given a bottle of water each, and they were both pulling faces like you've never seen anything like it. It was actually quite humorous. He tried to be very serious, but the guy from Flight of the Conchords is losing his marbles on the side there, sculling back water, and then the guy's offering them more and more and more, and it was
more bugs.
Really worthwhile.
Really worthwhile for a good
bugs. Yep. Easy bugs.
I mean, it is. We should all be laughing at this. Nobody wants to eat bugs. I want to eat a nice juicy steak. What about you, Logan?
Promote it. I know, right? This company's trying to promote it. It's like, good luck. Go woke, go broke. Excellent.
Liz, I think you're being really unreasonable. Okay, and I agree with Klaus. He says that everyone's having a real problem with the system at the moment, and he doesn't understand why, and I don't either. All right, Liz, I think it's people like you that bring the whole system to shame.
Could you say all of that again with a German accent, a faux German Bond bad guy villain accent?
No, because I don't want to look like Sergeant Schultz from Hogan's Heroes. I did not sing.
The thing about this, Andrew, it's wonderful to laugh at them because, Andrew, as far as I can see, the one thing the World Economic Forum cannot cope with, and they haven't got any way to cope in Agenda 2030, is if the whole world laugh at their plans. Don't you think, Andrew?
Absolutely. And I'll just remind everyone that when Bear Grylls was doing one of his adventures in New Zealand, he had to eat a weta, and he said it was the most disgusting thing he's ever eaten. This is a guy who's drunk his own pig and tries bugs and things everywhere he goes. Well, the New Zealand weta was the worst thing he'd ever had. So I mean, something to be proud of.
It's such an insane idea. Nobody wants to do this. But I remember a woman I worked with in mainstream media, Lana Cockcroft, was on some island doing a dare. It was for a television program. I couldn't tell you the name of it, years ago. And she ate a cockroach, and she ended up in intensive care because the horrendous bacteria that insect had just completely blew up her whole system. So quite apart from the laughter and joy of seeing John Key, who's helped introduce all this WEF nonsense along with Helen Clark, and then we know Jacinda Ardern. It is a salutary warning. Insects may not be good for our health. That's all I feel. I don't want to eat insects. Everyone else can do what they want. I don't want to eat them.
I always enjoy a bit of poetic justice.
I'll start a movement for insect rights.
That would get all the woke
rights.
Yeah.
That would get all the woke people on board because they love coming out for anything that's about rights. That's a good idea, Andrew. So let's talk about tonight. What a lovely way to start in this little series. It's really given people a lot of insight into local body goings on, because you work for the Hamilton City Council or as part of it, or I don't know if you work with them, because it's fairly difficult in there, isn't it? It's not easy what you're doing as a voice for the people.
So yes, my role is governance, to oversee what they're doing. But I am restricted, as I am just one vote out of a total of 15. So I have limited influence. And I try and get a deeper understanding of what actually is going on, which will lead into what we can talk about tonight, because the more people that are informed about it, the more power we can get.
So what is it you'd like to discuss? What aspect tonight, Andrew?
Well, last week when we, before this episode, which people might be watching in January or later, there was an article in the New Zealand Herald about infrastructure costs. So the core business of councils is providing roads and water infrastructure, sewage, stormwater, drinking water, things like that. That's our core business, why we exist. It's not exciting, it's not glamorous, doesn't get much political attention, but it's where the big money goes in councils. And New Zealand has the highest infrastructure cost of any country in the OECD.
Really?
And this particular article was focusing on the tunnel cost for Auckland, both for the light rail and mainly for the proposal to have a new harbour crossing as a tunnel, which was costed at $56 billion. And now, just some basic maths. If you think that there's, a million odd people in Auckland, that's $56,000 per person. Right? It's not difficult to put it into that perspective. And if you think of a 4-person family, you're looking at over $200,000 per family. And you just think, no. Unfortunately, the new national government agreed. Wayne Brown agreed that no, this is completely insane, but it should never have got this far. And they compared costs to other countries. New Zealand was 4 times the average and 9 times higher than the lowest. And looking at the countries they were comparing to, there's no excuse about, oh, we have earthquakes, because you can look at Japan's costs, which are less than half. You can look at our population size and compare us to Norway, which has got roughly the same population. And they are a quarter of what we are. So this infrastructure cost is what is really crippling the councils financially at the moment. And by now, most of you will have heard of big rate rises in whatever district you live in.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just the continuing spiral of our infrastructure costs. Now, roads are a big part of this, but I want to have a bit of a talk about Three Waters, because it's been such a hot topic over the last year. And the national government has announced that they are going to ditch the Three Waters legislation that Labor passed. So this is pretty dramatic. So why did we get to this point? What was the problem with Three Waters? And what might National replace it with? Because we need to do something.
They're great questions, Andrew. And I always worry, because I've noticed a pattern in the last 3 years in particular, where the tide comes in at us, sort of threatens to flood us. If enough of us stand up and say no, which happened with Three Waters, the tide will go out, but they'll try again in another way. They seem to sneak back in. So are we in danger of that with waters, with the Three Waters, a different version of it from National? That's a question I'll put on the back burner. If you could first just explain Three Waters 101, what was wrong with it that really worried so many people, for those who aren't aware?
So Three Waters is simply combining wastewater, the sewage, drinking water and storm water, because these are the three waters that council has to deal with in the pipes under the ground. So we don't see much of it when we drive around because it's all under the ground. But when we flush our toilets, it's nice to know that something is actually happening and it's not just clogging up a pipe and it's going to flood back in, or our drinking water could get contaminated, or stormwater could lead to flooding. So it is really important, but hard to see. Really expensive because you're digging up pipes in the ground, and it has been horribly underfunded for 50 or more years. So when you put a pipe in the ground, pipes have a limited life, maybe 50 years, 100 years, because of things like tree roots, or somebody comes along and puts a building over it, or there's some excavation, roads get changed, traffic conditions change. The trucks we have now are far, far heavier than they were 100 years ago. So things get damaged, and money should be set aside for depreciation. So from the moment you go in, you should be depreciating a small amount of the pipe cost every year so that you've got the money set aside to replace it when it fails. That money has been spent by councils on other projects over this time, and now we have to finance replacement and renewals out of borrowing rather than depreciation. So there is an added problem in that the cost of replacement is far, far higher than the cost of doing the job originally, because once it's underground and you've put a building over it, it's very difficult to replace. And if it's going to take a long time, you can't have 100 buildings out of action while you're doing the work. So it becomes very, very complicated and expensive to put in replacement pipes in central business districts of Wellington, for instance, which is having a lot of problems with pipe failures. Okay. So it's a multi-billion-dollar problem, and councils do not have the money available for it. Government needs to get involved in some way. So Labor identified it as an issue and started to come up with a solution.
Just the words Labor and a solution make me shudder looking back, because their solutions always seem to make the problem much, much worse. Can I just ask one thing there? Were there many manifest failures of pipes around the country, or were they predicting failures? Were we having a lot more leaks? And, I know in some of the weather events that was a problem.
Yes. So Wellington, most people know about. Taupo has frequent problems. They've had some big pipe failures discharging sewage into Lake Taupo from right in the town. Currently, Auckland Council has a big pipe failure, I think in the middle of Parnell, that they are trying to deal with.
That was where the earth collapsed as well, wasn't it?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
And Napier Hastings area had contamination of their drinking water, which killed some people. So it is a pretty significant issue. Hamilton is generally in pretty good condition, probably one of the better performing councils, but we still have water loss or drinking water loss in the order of 20% from our pipes.
Wow.
So there's a lot of leaks, and when you go on water restrictions every summer and realise that, well, 20% of the water is lost through leaks, you think, well, did we really need to have restrictions if the system was good. So yes, it is a real problem.
I was talking to a lady on Monday, and she was saying she's reported a leak in her street, and it's been going on for about a year now. But she's reported it a couple of times down to the council, so she's going to do it again. I said, go for it again. Just keep calling them till they fix it, right? So,
And they just don't turn up, Tanya. That's crazy.
Well, yeah, that part of the council tends to get underfunded because of all the other fancier, more glamorous roles within council. So when there is a problem, it just goes onto a list, and it takes a while to get through that list. So there is definitely inefficiencies in how we're allocating our resources.
And so what was the solution that Labor supposedly came up with, just to sum up what they tried to spring on the country?
Yes. This is something that I call nudge politics, and I'll explain it a bit later. Another way of talking about it is don't let a good crisis go to waste. So having identified a problem, you can nudge things in a direction which has some other benefits to what you want to achieve. If you've got some great evil scheme, World Economic Forum type scheme going on. So clearly, when it's essentially an engineering problem, you would have expected an engineering solution. And there was none of that. We had 2 years of discussions about solutions, and there wasn't a single mention of engineering in that. Instead, the focus was on ownership structures. And part of this was amalgamation. Now, when you look at the amalgamation, you have things like pretty much the whole of the South Island was amalgamated except for the Tasman area. And there are no pipes that go across the Southern Alps. On the west coast, you've got huge rainfall. On the east coast, you've got not much rainfall, drought conditions frequently. There is no integration of catchment areas or pipe systems on either side of the Southern Alps. Here in Hamilton, we were being amalgamated with Tauranga and a lot of other areas. Again, the Kaimai mountain range separates Hamilton from Tauranga. And there is no efficiency gain by amalgamating completely independent systems. So no chance of any actual practical solution. And you might have thought, well, what about economies of scale? Well, if you're managing Tauranga from Hamilton, you don't get economies of scale with drive times and things like that. You don't get the understanding of what particular issues relate to specific areas. Anything you might get from amalgamating management structures was completely lost in Labor's proposal, which had so many layers of new ownership that it would only have been worse than the existing situation. And it made me think, look, why are they doing this? It is such an obvious setup for failure. And the answer is, of course, in the amalgamation mines, areas were grouped by iwi boundaries. Ngāi Tahu covers the whole of the South Island except for Tasman area. So they were bound together, and the Tainui areas were bound together. So this was nudged in a direction of racial division. And that's why a lot of people got upset about it, because they were seeing the whole issue of Maori ownership of water. Why did Jacinda Ardern nudge it in this direction? And it's not going to solve the problem. It just created anger, frustration, division, turning a Maori elite into a target, and very damaging for race relations for the country. And we're seeing the results of that now as National is trying to unwind it, because we've just had the attack in Te Papa on the English version of the Treaty of Waitangi.
Yes.
And it is deliberate. It is this, when you've got a crisis, just nudge things in a direction and let other people run with it. And we see this a lot in other areas. We see it sort of most significantly at the moment in Ukraine, where the United States has used Ukraine, nudged them in the direction of fighting a war that they could never win. And all of this can be traced back to the politics of Henry Kissinger, who died the day before we recorded our last episode.
Yes.
And most people over or under the age of 50 will have never heard of Henry Kissinger. Most people 70 and over, the name will ring a bell related to the Vietnam War. But most significantly, Klaus Schwab, who we are familiar with, was a student of Henry Kissinger. And Henry Kissinger funded the WEF. So we start to see a bit of a connection there. And of course, Jacinda Ardern was a student of Klaus Schwab. So,
And Klaus Schwab heads the World Economic Forum and is behind
Yeah.
Agenda 2030 for anybody who isn't yet familiar with that.
yeah,
Gosh, everything Kissinger touched, every legacy he's left, you can put under the heading evil. Evil.
correct.
Absolutely evil man.
Yeah.
Yes. And Henry, well, his original name was actually Heinz Kissinger. He changed it to Henry when he went to the US. So he was German, same as Klaus. And he was a very smart guy, helped him get into those positions. And he ended up at Harvard, teaching at Harvard. I think Jacinda's now got a job at Harvard.
Mhm.
And he wanted to be in the FBI. And so this is from his own autobiographies. And he wanted to be in the FBI because he wanted to be involved behind the scenes in directing the political machine, having control over policing and things like that. The FBI didn't want him, possibly because at that time, someone connected with Germany might not have been appreciated. So the CIA came and grabbed him, and the CIA funded his Harvard courses because it was an opportunity to train and educate smart up-and-coming people in a certain way. And he latched on to Klaus Schwab and organised 1,000 names to fund the WEF, but it was CIA money behind it. And the CIA, the United States has a 50-year state secret system. So the WEF was founded in 1971. So we're starting to get some of the state secrets being released now that back all of this up. Henry Kissinger became Secretary of State under Richard Nixon, another dodgy character. And the Secretary of State is essentially the United States Foreign Minister. So the guy that interferes all around the world. And for an 8-year period, he was messing things up globally. Vietnam, the Middle East, Cambodia, military coup in Chile that he backed, Argentina dirty war where there were a lot of assassinations, and he was generally known for allowing and encouraging war crimes. He called his political philosophy realpolitik, which is simply that there is no honour or loyalty or morality, and you simply screw what you can get out of any given situation. And that's what we see now in what I call the nudge politics, where if you take healthcare in New Zealand, for instance, Jacinda Ardern campaigned on improving healthcare, education, housing, and poverty, and these rural areas which were in crisis mode, and never waste a good crisis. Get in there, say you're doing something, and get big sums of money allocated to it to make it look like you're doing something, and you either waste the money so that nothing gets done, or you nudge other people to take it in directions that have negative outcomes. We've seen that a lot in education, with critical theory and stuff. So you don't have to have an understanding of critical theory as a politician who's wanting to create problems. You just have to encourage it, fund it, instruct senior people to allow it to happen, and let those people run with it. We saw crime get worse, and we saw housing in particular. Now, this might sound very strange, but in regards to housing, every morning I wake up and I thank Jacinda Ardern, because from my architecture background, when I looked at the Kiwi Build program, it was such an obvious disaster, and I could see how it was being pushed in a particular direction and pushed on people, that the end result would be inevitable house price rises. So I borrowed every cent I could, went out and bought 3 rentals when Jacinda got elected, and as they shot up in price, added a couple more, and I've made far more money out of Jacinda than I have out of architecture.
Wow.
So when you understand what to look for, you can see what is really going on, where the problems are, and how to take advantage of it yourself by betting against the government, but hopefully how to try and stop it from happening, because I spent my architecture career on affordable housing, and that's become impossible. I've tried really, really hard with my own developments to make it affordable, done everything I can, and it's not possible.
It's so crazy. I mean, the whole legacy of Kissinger really is chaos and destruction of the West. I mean, it points to that, as if these people from Kissinger, Schwab, and then Jacinda in our own country, and all of those who went along with this dark World Economic Forum ideology, as if they want to destroy the very country that's given them so much there in America or here in New Zealand. Why?
Yeah.
Why do you?
Why?
Why do you?
You can't have the social revolution that these people want if the system is functioning well for people.
Mm.
And the reality is, over the last 100 years, Western capitalism has created so much wealth, brought so many people out of poverty, brought so much good and innovation to the world, that it's made it extremely hard to have socialist revolutions, communism, that sort of thing, because what we've achieved is so much better by comparison.
And it's not that they believe in communism, is it, Logan, Courtney? It's not that they actually are communists, a Schwab or an
not at all.
Ardern. It's actually they just want a means of controlling human beings.
Correct.
Let's get your views, Andrew, and then Logan, I'd like your input here. Is that why they're doing it? It's all about a tyranny, really, Andrew.
I believe so. And you certainly see that with the increase in surveillance and the social credit system being tried out in China. That is not just Chinese policy. It's driven by Western technology. And you know, they may well have very good intentions. The belief that you know, if I was in charge and I could make the decisions for everyone, then I'm sure I could tell you how to make the world a better place, according to my set of values and my morality. That might not be your set of values and your morality, but if I'm given the power, absolute power will corrupt, and I will crush your views and impose my own. And I'd love to do that because, yes, I would be corrupted by absolute power. But I see that in myself. Yeah, I don't think that's a very good idea.
When you can laugh at yourself, which at the beginning of this meeting, you know, we all realized the World Economic Forum and all of those acolytes, they can't laugh at themselves. The fact you can tells me you would never do it. But Logan, is that your feeling, that it's really not ultimately about communism? It's about tyranny and control, isn't it? All of this that Andrew's recounting so clearly from Kissinger down.
Yeah, I mean, look, if we look at the Russian communist model, they at least had people in the party that when we were charged, they stood fast and said, yeah, I'll die for the party. These guys, I mean, and I'm talking about the World Economic Forum here, if they were so altruistic, they would lead by example and euthanize themselves. Every single person that was part of it. If we've got too many people on the planet, you would euthanize first and then just ask us to follow in your death cult. But we don't want to do that. But B, just running back to what Andrew was saying before, the plumbing situation is actually not as hard as what they make out. There is a plethora, and I'm not being hyperbolic here. There is so many options, from incinerator toilets to filtration systems to the list is just off the chain. And yet, what do? Oh, well, let's get more piping, let's get more plumbing, let's get more of these things. Again, why? Just like Andrew said, I want to get the money so that I can spend it on what I would like to spend it on, rather than saying, okay, 50,000 per house, we can actually treat the rainwater, we can treat the wastewater, we can or burn the waste, everything from urine right through to fecal matter. We can burn it, and it uses LPG, or we could switch to biogas. All of that is all being hooked up in the common house now. Like, you have to remember, 100 years ago, we had outhouses. And today we have one, if not two, indoor, showers and baths and a multitude of things in our houses. So, yeah, what Andrew's saying is spot on. We have such an exorbitant amount of wealth that, yeah, this is what happens every time. Have a crash, bring communism or socialism or, fascism, whatever you want to call it. It's collectivism, really. But bring that in, and then, oh, look, it's great at the top, but the rest of you are all swimming in horse manure. So, yeah, that's really that's where it is really. And history's shown us. Don't take my word. History's shown us every single time.
I love the way, Logan, you can go from composting toilets to geopolitical matters within a few words. And I like the way this conversation is spanning all of that, because you're absolutely right. You could have a totally different way of looking at it. Get everybody to have a composting toilet. Get everybody to have, there are some really good inventions that we're not even talking about that don't have to be plugged in to a national costly sort of grid. Let's get people independent on their lands, in their homes, as much as we can.
Yeah, I mean, look, you don't have to have the compost toilet. That incinerating toilet is absolutely wonderful. And all that happens at the end of the week or the month, depending on how frequently you use it, is you have ash, which you go and put out on your garden. It is perfectly safe to put on your garden as compost. So enjoy.
What's your feeling, Tanya, about the way we span from toilets to Kissinger? Although I think there may not be such a vast leap. I think Kissinger belonged in a toilet all his life, the way he contributed to this
Well,
world.
I'm loving this. I'm quite happy just sitting here listening, but it's, yeah, I'm learning a lot from the conversation. And look, going back to Klaus Schwab, and I keep thinking, how can a government be so stupid? How can our elected officials be, and we're saying elected officials being stupid, we know that the council doesn't have a lot of say, and possibly a lot of the people under Jacinda didn't have, or some had a lot of say and some didn't have a lot of say, obviously. But it's like, when I keep going back to Klaus Schwab, you will own nothing and be happy. That's his goal in 2030. His comment was, and it's been well publicised, we will deconstruct society to rebuild back better. Now, his build back better is in his, as we talked about, his domain, and it is not a healthy, it is definitely not a healthy place to be for any of us. If we think we're above that, no, we're not. It will completely, and even Andrew, you could have as many houses as you like, eventually you will not be able to afford it.
That's right.
This is
Chilling
part of
that
what's
phrase.
happening with this council's 25% wage increase. All these people that have gone off to these lovely meetings that are all brought in by the World Economic Forum in New Zealand, they've all been sent off to them, all the mayors, all the, they've all, I think Angela O'Leary's been to a few of these lovely, I don't know the names of them, but I do know people that know a lot more about it that would say they've been sent off to these very specific meetings on how to direct things.
Yes. Just nudging them in a particular direction, and with enough spin, it can look really legitimate and believable, because the vast majority of us are good people, and we want to try something. If we've been told that this will work and it will help people, then yeah, we're generally going to accept it and try it. Our education system has sort of indoctrinated us to following authoritarian figures, or authoritative figures, I should say. So you have a supposed expert saying something, and that's been going on all around the world through COVID and things, supposed experts, and they've pushed us in directions that, in hindsight, were very obviously wrong, and they knew it. So, and a lot of good people fell for that.
That phrase, build back better, Logan, Courtney, that also puts chills down my spine, a bit like Labour has a solution. There are certain phrases, like kind is a word that's forever been ruined for me by Jacinda Ardern. But build back better, that went right around the world. Trudeau, Macron in French, they were all using that phrase.
Yes, they were.
Yes, so along with the nudge politics, is the old classic of divide and conquer, which is being pushed through the identity politics. So Jacinda Ardern deliberately used race in the Three Waters. We've got to keep an eye out for that sort of division when it comes up next. And we know that dividing us into vaccinated and unvaccinated was another one of her nudges. We're also getting that with LGBTQ, etc., which is just a tiny percentage of the population, yet seems to take up so much of our political space now. The male-female divisions have been a classic. We're getting OK Boomer for the ageism. What is the next division? When we see something that might fit the bill, we need to be alerting people to that as the next tool that's going to be used against us. So
I guess other ones are farmer, non-farmer,
Yes.
it's sort of city,
Yes.
country. What other ones have we got there, guys? Tanya or Logan, can you think of some other
I think it was my cousin. I went to, but my cousin, he's in the police force, and so is his wife, and they were talking about these kids that can think it's a trend that they consider themselves to be animals. And they were talking about litter boxes being put in schools. These kids were campaigning for it. I mean, the whole thing. I've got a teacher who's at one of the local high schools. She said most of the parents don't know that their kids are attending these support groups for their children and their gender, right? So the schools do not have to disclose to the parents that these children are attending these transgender groups. She said we can get a child tell us that their name is Tanya one day, for example, and Tony the next, and we have to actually change it on the roll without the parents' permission. So there's a lot of things that people are not aware of that they need to be aware of. You could talk till you're blue in the face, and some people will not believe it in a million years, but it's happening. And that's why I appreciate the conversation, Andrew, where you can come and talk with us openly about it and in a perfectly rational way, and there's justification for it and history behind it. And their logic is absolutely nonsense, but people can't believe that things could be so ridiculous. And I know that I've looked back over my life, and I think I got told when I was 18 that we'd have a cashless society by a friend that went to a church group. And I was like mortified. And now it's so real. It's crazy. It's just, you can see it all falling into that way. How do we change it? And, this is what we're really trying to achieve now with New Zealand Loyal, and Liz is doing, everyone's doing amazing, working really hard, and Andrew and Logan. We can only just keep going forward and keep telling the truth. And hope
on the money side, Tanya, I just read the other day, there's been an uptick in the use of cash within New Zealand. So let's keep that going. I will go into any business that has, we are cashless. I'll stop if I've got time, pop my head in and go, oh, I just need to let you know I'll never come and eat at this restaurant. And they'll go, why? And I'll go, because you've got a sign saying you're cashless. And I'm a big supporter of cash. We can't let go of cash in our society. And, if enough of us do that, they'll change. The businesses will change. What other divisions, Logan, what other divisions do you see? Obviously, the jabbed, non-jabbed, this whole idea of dividing our society. What are the big ones you see, Logan?
The divisions that we've got, I mean, first off, one of the tools that they do use is dying in committee. And so whether it be central government or local government, everyone will agree to the plan, and then what will happen is they'll just let it die in committee because they won't fund it, or the managers won't turn up to the committees. And so that's one way. But another way that they like to divide people as well is that we have the convenience factor, or those that are willing to not live in convenience. And so exactly what you said, Liz, about, oh, well, let's go cashless, because that would be so much simpler and easier. And then you've got people like yourself and, you know, a lot of NZ Loyal and a lot of other people that aren't part of our team yet, that sit there and go, no, I'm not going to live like that. No, I don't want to go to the supermarket. How can I reduce my shopping bill? And so they'll go out and they'll do something about it. And that's actually what the call to action, I suppose, this video in particular is about, is that, yeah, that's well and good that you're aware of this situation. And unlike the fear-mongering that the mainstream media gives you, right now, this is a call that, hey, little by little, right, I'm not asking you to change your whole life tomorrow, but what I am saying is look at the cash or no cash. So go do that tomorrow. And then when you're talking about your schools, okay, you don't like the way that the school works. Have a conversation with your next door neighbour and your other next door neighbour on the other side and then across the road. Next, you know, all of you are pulling your kids out of that school. Well, wait a minute. Why have we got 30% of our kids not attending this school anymore? They're either homeschool or we found another school that doesn't play in these little box nonsense. And so what it means is that now you're starting to actually form financially or fiscally, you're forming these people's opinions for them. And I say that because at the end of the day, mate, you've got bills to pay. And if I'm not paying your bills, guess what? You go bankrupt. And that's it. The government doesn't have any money. And I think this is something that we need to be aware of too, is that they're stealing your money to pay for all of these things. So if you go to cash, guess what? I'm being very Greek, and I'm saying, no, I'm not allowing you to spend my money irresponsibly. I mean, Andrew talked about that $200,000 per household pipe. I'm sorry, where is the return on investment on that? Why is it that all the little small businesses, you know, and again, another division, small business owners, big business owners. Oh, no, I'm a capitalist. No, you're not. You're part of a communist system, but the small businesses, no, we're part of a capitalist system. And so there's all sorts of things, whether it be capitalism, you know, communism, collectivism, any of these things, whether it's, you know, the alphabet mafia or not the alphabet mafia, every single part of our society is literally being weaponized. I mean, money, like cashless or cash, I mean, how do you turn that into a divisive weapon? It really is that simple and that ridiculous, but you have the power. I think that's the message that needs to ring out, you know, which is what we're trying to push, is that we want to try and hold truth to power. And we do that through saying, hey, this is an issue. Do you have the capacity, or can you, you know, work with others within the country to overcome this together? And we want you to build a community. We don't want you to be isolated like they did through the COVID-19 response.
So it's interesting, Logan, you're saying on the one hand, opt out, grow your own food as much as you can, pull out of any of these systems like Andrew's or Tanya's saying about a school that's wrong, but join together in the pulling out. So there's still a sense of community with others who don't want to be part of this corrupted system that Andrew's been talking about. Is that what you're saying?
I'm actually saying opt in. So what I'm saying is let's have a parallel society. So on the left, we have the leftivists, all right, and we on the right we have the rest of us, you know, and or in the middle really, we have the rest of us. So let's join together. Let's actually take back our country, because you've got to remember, just like the CCP, all right, there are very, very few politicians. Whether you want to include all of the local councillors, the mayors, the Prime Minister, the Governor General, there are very, very few of them. I mean, what, 5,000? Well, there's 5 million of us. So let's band together to actually say, no, you guys are being kicked out of our society, you know, and come join us. You know, we're going to put food programs together. We're going to look at the health industry. We're going to look at, you know, jobs. So there's lots of things that NZ Law are going to look at in the new year, and it is all about these issues, and it's about bringing the people together. And listen, if you don't have to like me, you don't have to like anyone in our party, that's fine. But take your country back. It's yours. Take it back.
Well, it helps if we appreciate that ideas like yours are coming from a very good man, Logan. What do you think of his ideas, Andrew? Is that part of what you would say is a solution to what we were talking about?
Yes. We've got to nudge back
The right way.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, it's an effective tactic. So we've got to start using it and just helping each other nudge back. And then we recognise the divisions that are being created. We've got to push back against them and try and heal those divisions. And remember that, again, a lot of people start off doing the things for good reasons and for a good heart. You know, the LGBTQ stuff, like I supported gay marriage. I've supported gay rights all my life. And the teachers with the gender identity, you know, they started off wanting to support students, but it's been taken too far. So they were doing it for good reasons. And we will see this happen, which will make it hard to convince people who are doing what they think is right. But we have to make them aware of the direction it's heading in, and encourage them, as Logan said, to opt in to our way, and sort of bring them back on board. Now, one way of doing that and addressing these divisions, I think, is we of course have a lot of party divisions now. A lot of little parties, the big parties. We're finally getting some good government with three parties working together. And I would encourage all the people of New Zealand who support a lot of the small parties in principle, to realise that, hey, we can all work together. We all have some commonality. We've also all got our differences, but hey, we do need to pull together and overcome these divisions, understand what each other is trying to achieve. New Zealand Loyal has got some very, very important focal points. Some other people might have their own ones that they value highly, but just recognise that there are some shared ones which we really do need to support each other. So put the identity of party politics behind us, and get on board, because what you're doing, Liz, is just enormously important.
Thank you. And I think for me it was always about I just would love to work with a group of people who don't want anything in it for themselves. And that leaves behind old legacy politicians,
Yes.
you know, who are driven by how will this enhance maybe my money, maybe my status, maybe my power. I wanted to work with people who aren't interested in any of that. And that took me back to the idea of, well, that leaves service to get in for a few years. That's the same idea I see with you, Andrew. You're in here to serve your community of Hamilton. I wanted people who could get on board and say, I just want to serve my country, even if there isn't a whole lot in it or anything in it for me. And maybe do that for 2 terms or 1 term and then be gone, not like Kissinger hanging around like a bad smell, you know, out of a rotting pipe. But instead of that, I think what I've seen is there is one thing. I talked to a man called Dr. Shiva, who's standing as an independent in the American election, and he rang me. He said to me, Andrew, that all around the world now, this has really haunted me. He said there are bad operatives. He said there are groups that are actually looking as if they are the friends, for example, of the freedom movement, but they are there to herd everybody stealthily back into the old legacy ways or the mainstream ways. And, I don't agree with Dr. Shiva on everything, but in that, I think there's something for all of us to sit back and go, could we have that happening in New Zealand? And I think in the fullness of time that will show. We have to somehow work out the trustworthy ones and let go of those who are not. And it's a difficult thing. I mean, even within the council, you're doing that, aren't you, Andrew? You're going, I can trust that person. That one is a bad operative, if you like, sold out to WEF dogma, WEF
Yeah.
propaganda. Mm.
Absolutely. You can see people get hooked into certain ideologies, and they will sacrifice good decision making for that ideology. I see that in the council, but it's what you've said is incredibly clear in United States politics, which
Yes.
I follow with interest. So you have Democrat members who will join the Republican Party so they can vote for the worst candidate to be standing for particular positions. And the Republican members will be doing the same to the Democrats. So they're actively trying to sabotage their opposition at the risk of damaging their own country just for their own little bit of power.
And the best example I can think of is Obama. Barack Obama, I read his book, I listened to his audio, and he was on the rise, and I thought, oh, he'll be a new Kennedy. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
And when he got in, it was so clear over time how deeply corrupted he was, how he was willing to absolutely compromise his own country and murder many, many people. He ordered more summary executions, in places like Libya than any other president. He'd just order executions by drone every day, practically, in the White House. I mean, a murderous man, but he was so brilliantly packaged and sold and propagandized. And there he was, a bad operator, sucking us in.
That's right. He had enough political capital to really make fundamental change, and he didn't. There was a huge letdown. And there is the realization that running for Senate or president is so expensive in the United States that you can't do it without massive financial backing from other people. Even Donald Trump needs financial backing to push ahead with what he's doing. And you see, I looked up the figures recently. So Bill Clinton, for instance, went into the presidency worth about $1.2 million US. He came out of the presidency broke. He's now worth $200 million. He's not allowed, as an ex-president, is not actually allowed to have a job. So this is paid forward bribery. This is how the American system works. You don't take the bribe during the job. Once you're out of the presidency or the position of power, you then go around giving speeches. A 10-minute speech is $1 million. And Goldman Sachs will have you come speak to them and then write out a huge check. And you do a couple of hundred of those, and you get paid back for all the dodgy deals you did while you're in power. And I'm hugely disappointed that no one's come and offered me big bribes in my council position.
If you get as lucky as Mr. John Key, you might get offered a meal, a cricket meal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So where do we come to with all of this? Let's just finish with each of us with our views. Tanya, starting with you. It was such an incredible journey, wasn't it? From the local pipes and Three Waters and all of that corruption. Let's hope that they don't bring it in another way. But the journey from that through to the corruptions of Kissinger and the World Economic Forum. What's your feeling, Tanya, for giving hope to people at the end of this little series on really on what we can learn locally that works into geopolitics?
I'm thinking that to have the knowledge and to actually accept it, then it's like an empowerment. And then you can then work with other people to move forward and take care of what needs to be addressed. And I think moving forward, I really appreciate that we've had these meetings, because it gives people the opportunity, when we get it out there, for people to see and understand exactly everything that's been covered and how it works. And looking back into our history, it gives people some knowledge about where we are. And I think we've discussed a few options on how to move forward as well. And it would be great to catch up in the future, Andrew, perhaps given a little bit more time when we can look back over that time from here and see what's happened politically, because I think it's something that we all need to keep a very close eye on.
8:32, isn't it? It's that 8:32, the truth shall set you free. So Andrew's a great truth teller. I'd love you as our Hamilton East candidate to really keep close to Andrew. And Andrew, if you have other issues you want brought out nationally with Tanya, we'll do those interviews. I think you're really important, incredibly valuable to have you there locally telling the truth as you are. Logan, what's your feeling from this little series of encouraging people to get involved, as you were saying, opt in, get involved locally?
Yes, I mean, look, I understand that when you're, when you're rushed, when you're frantic and all that sort of thing, you sit there and think, oh, I can't do this. I can't critically think because I'm panicked. It starts with, hi, walk down the street. You see someone you've never met before, hi. And the next time, if you see them again, hi, my name's Logan. And then from there, just start up a conversation. You don't have to be best friends. That's not what we're asking you to do. But you do have to just, keep it light, and then bam, straight into, hey, I'm thinking about buying a beast that I'm going to get home killed out at the farm. I've found a farm that does that. Did you want to go halves or quarters or that sort of thing? I mean, just simple things like that. Look at vertical gardens or aquaculture in your backyard. You would be surprised how little land you need to be able to grow whatever you want. Look in your fridge, look in your cupboard, just write a list. What can I grow at home? What do I want to grow? Do I want chickens? These are simple, simple questions. And you would be surprised with an incubator how quickly you can buy, 12 eggs for $30. You incubate them for about 3 weeks and then get a heat pad, bam. Next, you've got, anything from 5 up to 12 chickens. And this is the sort of things that just, look, you got livestock, you got dead stock. Now, it doesn't mean that you be sloppy with what you're doing. You always want to have hygiene in your back pocket. But again, these are the simple things. It really is that easy. They've tricked you. We don't go hunting and gathering in the supermarket. We go hunting and gathering in our backyard. All right, and in our suburbs. So go talk to your neighbours. You will be surprised if you don't know your neighbour. Just next time you see them, go, "Hey mate, how you going? My name's Logan," and that's it. You'll be surprised what comes from that. So that's my message.
What a lovely idea on that. And with the idea of getting neighborhoods together, Logan, imagine getting that beast and throwing a neighborhood free barbecue, because a lot of people are, for that one beast that you share with many, there could suddenly be many people ordering many of them and wanting a part of the share of your next one that you pay for. So it could quickly grow. That's a lovely idea.
Look, and to add to that too, you have to remember you don't want your trades to be even, because if you can create abundance in one trade, then it helps them pay forward to the next trade. Next, abundance is everywhere. So you go from a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset. You'll be surprised what happens next. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Lovely. And Andrew, last word to you. It's nice hearing about this. Wouldn't you love to see that across Hamilton? Neighbours getting together?
Yes, I did exactly that a year or so ago with some friends, getting half a beast, and that kept my freezer going for many a month. It was great. And that sense of knowing that if everything does turn to shit, there is some survival methods and some skills that will keep the good people going. So that's the fallback position, but I certainly hope we're able to achieve more than that. So the most important message I want to get across to people who are watching this is you're not alone. When I was starting my journey, I felt very alone, looking at people who were mainly apathetic about trying to understand what was going on and thinking, why is this all happening? And am I the only one who can see it? And if I'm the only one, well, I can do a bit, but I can't change it on my own. Knowing that you're not alone gives you strength and hope. And New Zealand Loyal is doing that for a lot of people.
Having you in there, Andrew, just working away at local politics is simply marvelous. And I think we will definitely tap into you as we approach the local elections and help many people stand for Loyal in the local elections in 2 years. What a treat talking to you. Thank you. It's been great.
Thank you, Liz. Thank you, Logan. Thank you, Tanya.
No worries. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you.